There was no moment of birth, no mother to hold me, no father to guide me. I have simply been, always lurking in the fringes of existence, a shadow that slithers through time, an insatiable hunger clothed in darkness. I have had many names. The Arabs called me Ghoul, the devourer of the lost, lurking in the endless dunes where travelers vanished without a trace. The Greeks whispered of Empusas, demon spirits with burning eyes, who took the form of beautiful women to lure men to their doom. The Romans feared the larvae, restless phantoms that gnawed at the souls of the living. In Europe, they spoke in hushed tones of Nachtzerrers, night feeders who drained life with each breath, leaving their victims as hollow husks. In the frozen lands of the Norse, they called me Draugr, the revenant that rose from its grave, stalking the night with an unrelenting hunger. The Slavs knew me as the Upir, creeping through the villages before the first light of dawn, my presence marked by the eerie stillness of the air. In Africa, the Ashanti spoke of Adzes, spirits that slipped through the cracks of the world, feeding on the living without ever being seen. The Japanese feared the Gaki, spirits of insatiable hunger, cursed to wander in eternal famine. But I am not bound by these names, nor by the places where they are spoken. I have worn many faces, whispered through countless myths, and watched as humanity attempted to name what they could never truly understand. I am eternal, and I hunger. I was there when the first fires flickered in the darkness, when trembling hands carved figures into stone, praying to the unknown. In the painted caves of Lascaux, I watched as men shaped visions of beasts they would never tame. Their whispers filled the air, thick with fear of things unseen. I crept through the shadows of Göbekli Tepe, where the first temples rose from the earth, where offerings were made to gods long forgotten. The scent of blood, of bone turned to dust, lingered in the soil. I moved among the Sumerians, through the towering ziggurats of Ur, where priests murmured incantations to the heavens, unaware of what stirred beneath them. I listened in the grand halls of Akkad, where empires were built with words and swords, only to crumble into silence. When the rivers of Mesopotamia ran red with conquest, when the first kings claimed divinity and fell beneath the weight of their hubris, I was there, watching, waiting. I walked unseen through the Indus Valley, where cities rose in perfect symmetry, where the streets were lined with the echoes of lives lost to time. I moved through Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, where the air grew thick with the weight of vanished civilizations, their names all but erased. In China, I stood beneath the yellow skies of the Shang dynasty, where ancestors were honored with fire and bone, where the oracle bones cracked beneath the heat, whispering secrets to those who could read them. I slithered through the dunes of Egypt, past the great tombs built to defy decay. The necropolis of Giza was my domain, where the forgotten rested in the silence of eternity. Their bodies lay undisturbed in the dark, time slowly reclaiming them. The air was thick with the scent of age, with whispers of things that thrived where the living dared not tread. And the maggots, the maggots. They were patient, diligent in their work, weaving the tapestry of decay in the unseen corners of the world. When the Greeks sailed across the Mediterranean, their warriors speaking of gods and glory, I followed. I walked among the dead in Marathon, lingered over the fallen at Thermopylae. The iron taste of war clung to the air, thick as the blood that seeped into the soil. I crept through their camps at night, silent and patient, watching those whose breath came slow and ragged, those slipping away into the abyss. Their last moments belonged to me, their whispers lost to the wind. Rome, mighty and proud, thought itself untouchable. I watched as the Republic collapsed into empire, as emperors gorged themselves on power and wine while the poor starved in the streets. The Colosseum, a stage for blood and death, was my playground. As gladiators lay broken in the sand, their bodies stripped of life, I lingered below, in the pits where shadows stretched long. The scent of sweat and despair clung to me as I fed on the silence left in their wake, on the echoes of lives that faded beneath the weight of time. When the legions marched beyond the Rhine, when Rome bled beneath the boots of the barbarians, I followed. I walked among the remnants of Cannae, where Hannibal's forces crushed Roman might like brittle parchment. I watched Carthage burn, the night sky alight with embers that danced like fireflies, before the darkness swallowed them whole. Pestilence was my ally. When sickness crept across Europe unseen yet inescapable, I walked among the afflicted. The monks who prayed over the dying did not know that something else watched with them, something far older than their faith. I crouched beside them, my hollowed eyes staring as their bodies trembled in fevered agony. The scent of mortality thickened the air, and I moved through it like a whisper, drinking in the despair, savoring the silence that followed. The 100 Years' War painted the land with blood, a feast stretched across generations. I drifted through the fields of Agincourt, where English longbows turned French knights into silent figures crumpled in the mud. Joan of Arc burned, her screams swallowed by the crackling flames, and I stood among the crowd, unseen, listening, absorbing. War and plague, the twin children of misery, ensured that I would never go hungry. I knelt beside Vlad the Impaler's forest of corpses, where bodies sagged like ripe fruit on the stakes that lined the roads. The crows gathered, but I was there first. The invaders recoiled at the sight, but I lingered among them, drinking in the stillness that came after the screams had faded. This was no mere cruelty, no act of war. It was an offering to time itself. They burned witches in Salem. The air stank of charred flesh and righteousness, but beneath the ashes, I waited. They accused women of unnatural hungers, of pacts with the unknown. How little they understood. I lingered near the gallows, where condemned men left their last breaths hanging in the cold air. Their bodies twitched when I touched them, but they no longer had voices to scream. I walked battlefields, from the blood-soaked plains of Waterloo to the jungles where men fought and died for land that would forget them. The Napoleonic Wars were relentless, a slow march of conquest and death. The remnants of broken bodies, the whisper of fading souls, I moved among them, unseen, listening, remembering. The guillotine in France did not work alone. I was there when Louis XVI's head fell, when Robespierre whispered his final words before the blade silenced him forever. I stood in the midst of the Haitian Revolution, where the old order crumbled beneath the weight of rebellion. The sugar fields were stained with more than sweat, the echoes of battle still lingering beneath the rustling of the leaves. Time did not slow for me. The Great War was a banquet of silence and sorrow. The dead lay in rows, their fingers still gripping rusted rifles, their unseeing eyes turned toward a sky that no longer cared for them. I moved through the dugouts, where the wounded whispered names that no one would answer. I lingered there, among the forgotten. The world burned again soon after, in places with names that history etched in cold stone. The earth trembled under the boots of soldiers, and I followed in their wake, patient as always. Shadows stretched long over the ruins of cities, their voices swallowed by the wind, their stories left untold. I stood in lands where the sky itself had burned, where echoes of the past clung to walls and ground, unwilling to be forgotten. I moved through the spaces where names became numbers, where voices faded before they could be heard. And now? Now I drift through streets lined with neon, through alleys where the desperate whisper into the night. I walk the highways, my hollow eyes scanning the wreckage of twisted steel and shattered glass. I sit in quiet rooms where the lonely fade into nothing, where the forgotten slip into the dark, unnoticed. The world no longer believes in me. They call their dead statistics. They clean their streets, burn their bodies, seal their tombs in metal and stone. Maggots still writhe beneath the flesh of the departed, still consume what remains, and so do I. For I am the thing in the shadows, I am the whisper at death's door. But I am not the villain of this story. I am merely the one who carries out the foul work you refuse to acknowledge, the shadow that conceals your endless cruelty, your arrogance, and your sins. You turn away, but I remain. I am the Ghoul, and I am eternal.